Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Department of Education and the C3S Center for Critical Computational Studies, I welcome you to this evening's event. I'm delighted that you are here and that you join us. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you here. Please let me take this opportunity to thank everyone for their generous support of my faculty with regard to the planning and implementation of this research day. I'd like to thank the following people in alphabetic order: Monika Büttner, Juliane Engel, Mandy Röder, Friedrich Wolf, and those who remain unmentioned here, and our student assistants, Alexander and Franka. This evening's event is part of our department's Research Day. This year, we are hosting it together with the C3S. My colleague Ulrich Meyer will say a few words in a moment. After that, Elinor will speak, and then Juliane and I shall open the plenary discussion, which will not be a panel discussion. So it's your turn right after the keynote. Don't fall asleep, which will not happen. Our speaker today is Dr. Elinor Carmi. She flew in from London yesterday and will be staying until tomorrow. It's always nice when someone stays a little bit longer. It gives us more time to come up with further project ideas. We have just come here from a joint workshop. We have had 2 impressive hours discussing issues of research and digitalization. I express my hope that this is only the beginning of an exchange and that we'll meet more often. I say this on behalf of my entire colleagues and the C3S. Dr. Elinor Carmi is a senior lecturer at City St. George's University of London. She works as a digital rights activist, researcher, journalist on issues such as data policy and maybe agency, justice, especially social justice, and internet governance, coming from a background of feminist theory. Elinor has been an expert on the Technology Advisory Panel to the UK Information Commissioner's Office since May 2024. She advises international organizations such as UNESCO, Amnesty International, and the World Health Organization. I consider Elinor to be one of the leading present-day public intellectuals. As a young man, I had the privilege of meeting 2 of the older specimens. I met Noam Chomsky and Benjamin Barber in Singapore twice. Today, I am the older man, and sitting before me and with us is you, dear Elinor, the future that fills me with hope. But I'm also research dean of my faculty. As an educational scientist, I am interested in following questions. How do humans learn? How do they develop? How do they adjust? And how do they survive? Because how to survive is the root meaning of the word resilience you hear more often in educational discourses. The art of surviving ourselves. There are 3 sides to this. The ontogenetic one of the individual and its biography of learning, development, adjustment, and survival. The second one is the socio-genetic aspect of contemporary society. And the third one is the phylogenetic one of humanity as a species. Semantic fields such as planetary awareness, sustainability, education, data policy, and social justice, as well as research and criticism, reflect these three facets in their respective ways, coupled with the intransigence of senior researchers like us. Questions of data and digitality and algorithms cut across these semantics. They therefore enable interdisciplinary connections. They refer to human life between biographical, life world, and programmatic references, between experience and aspiration. As scientists, we just need to start talking to each other more often and in a rule-based, cross-disciplinary manner. That's what we will do this evening right here.
First of all, thank you so much, Harry and Viviane, for inviting me. It's been an absolute pleasure so far. I've heard really great projects before in the workshop that we had, and I really like the collaborations that I'm seeing between computational kind of disciplines, law, education, and it really mirrors my kind of experience and kind of research interest, because I've always been kind of dabbing into multiple disciplines, and I think that that's really important when we are examining the Datafied and now AI society, because everything is AI right now. I'm sure that you probably know. So again, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I really hope to kind of keep in contact, because I would love to know the kind of what will happen with your projects. Yeah, so I think let's kind of dive in and kind of linking into what I said. Is the sound okay? Or is there... Should I take this off or let me know? Yeah? Okay. So, because I move a lot, that's the problem. Yeah, okay. I should continue. Okay. Hopefully you won't need earplugs to properly hear this presentation. But yeah, so to kind of maybe very briefly mention how I got to this topic. I have, in the last 15 years, been engaged in multiple types of research into kind of the Datafied Society. I've been examining what's happening behind our screens, so kind of the standardization of web cookies and real-time bidding, kind of what is actually funding a lot of the platforms that we... And then I've been doing a lot of projects around data literacies, so examining how people understand and engage with data. And the more I've been doing the research, the more I got angry. And I think this research that I'm going to show you now is the culmination of a lot of anger and kind of passion, which I think are quite similar, into what are we going to do about it. So let's begin. So what can citizens actually do to challenge big tech? I'm sure that every day that you're waking up, you're hearing about a new fun thing that is happening with big tech companies. A lot of them are in the US, but we feel them and they kind of are forcibly, many times, kind of integrating into our everyday life. And what I got really upset about is the fact that we don't really have a lot of power against these companies. So, we're seeing articles all the time about, how AI is extracting our data. And as somebody who has done a lot of work about web cookies and real-time bidding, I'm definitely not surprised, because in a way AI is just kind of all of the web cookies on steroids and kind of extracting instead of just asking us for consent, which is meaningless in a way. But I have a paper about the kind of the digital consent mechanism and how useless it is. AI companies just decided, let's just not ask them at all. Why do we need to even ask them if we're taking their data, right? So we're seeing that. And, different kind of websites such as Tumblr and WordPress, as you can see here, they're using our data to train their AI tools. And when you ask these companies, do you actually scrape from different kind of places? Suddenly they are not really sure. They don't really know where they take their data from. But if you have published, if you're an academic here, I don't know if there's a website where you can actually find out if your books and articles were training data for Meta. And as you know, we make so much money from our academic publishing, so it's really great to know that it's being taken by Meta to make money that we never actually got, right? And I just want to kind of, I'm sure that, or not sure, maybe some of you have seen this campaign. This has been one of the biggest campaigns against AI companies that was done by the creative industries in the UK a couple of months ago. And it was called Make It Fair. And this is quite the unique picture because this is a huge collaboration between all of the publishers, kind of the newspapers in the UK. And this was because there was an amendment in a new law around AI in the UK, which basically said whether artists should be asked if their art or creative work should be asked before it's being kind of extracted by AI companies. And you had big campaigners like Elton John and Kate Bush and a lot of people that were kind of saying, actually, we're not against technology. We just want you to maybe compensate us. So that was a really big campaign a couple of months ago. It's still being debated in Parliament. And I think one of the things that we often hear about before, but when we were actually asked if we wanted our data to be extracted, is, people were saying, well, people actually don't care about their privacy, right? So people say that they care about it, but then they do things like accept cookies, so it actually means that they don't care, or they use Google, right? Who here use Google? Or they use TikTok, or they use different kind of, technologies that are not really privacy preserving. So that's called the privacy paradox, when you do something even though you claim that you care about privacy, but then you actually do actions that might mean that you don't care about privacy. And I think what's that research that argues about the privacy paradox missing is that most people, and this is what we discovered in our research as well, most people don't know what these companies actually do. Most people don't know what data is, and I'm going to talk about it a bit later. So, when a person goes to Google or when a person uses a browser like Chrome, for example, instead of Brave, which I use, or uses WhatsApp instead of Signal, is because mainly those people don't really know what these companies do, right? So we're already talking in the UK, a couple of days ago, the UK government said, we need AI upskilling to everybody. We need everybody to be on the AI wagon. Of course, Keir Starmer, is the prime minister, met the big technology companies in order for them to do those upskilling, because of course they are the people who know the best about how to upskill everybody. But basically what we're seeing here is that the majority of people, this is from Pew Research Center, that says that Americans are largely concerned and confused about how their data is being used, but the majority don't even know how it's being used, what is the purposes, and how it could be used, and what they can do about it. So the talk that I'm giving you today is built partly on this project that was published first as a report and now as an article. It's open access, so if you want to check it out, please do, where I interviewed digital rights NGOs, so people who work with citizens around projects and campaigns to kind of try to challenge the big technology companies in different ways. And one of the things that I wanted to understand is, what can we actually do? What kind of literacies do people need? What works? What doesn't work? In order to kind of try to let my anger kind of have some kind of solution, right? What can we actually do? Because I think many times it's really easy, and I'm going to say that at the end as well, many times it's easy to kind of sink into depression or pessimism, and I think that it's really important for us to step away from that and be optimistic, careful optimistic, but I think it's really important to also try to do things about it. And we're going to talk how that could look like as I go along in my talk. So when I was talking to them, four main things emerged. One of the first things that they said is that many people, so if we're talking about contextual awareness, that many people find digital harms and abuses seen as distant, complex, and abstract. And one of the interviewees said, people don't care about things if they can't imagine it happening to them. And does anybody know about this scandal? Okay, so the post office scandal is one of the biggest scandals in the UK around technology. What happened is that around 2000, the post office has integrated a software from Fujitsu that was basically meant to handle a lot of the money, and the algorithm was wrong, and it's kind of showed that there's money missing. So what was happening is that hundreds of post office managers were accused of stealing and were sued by the post office. Some of them went to prison, some of them killed themselves because they couldn't afford all of the expenses. And after a long time, it was discovered that actually it was the software. But one of the reasons why, it's a super fascinating case. I really encourage you to dig into it. But one of the interesting things was that this thing was reported in the media for quite a while, but only when there was a television show on ITV, which is a television channel called Mr. Bateman versus the Post Office, which humanized the people and showed the story behind it. People really started to care, and the court kind of had to make more kind of attention to it. People started to demand more justice to these people. Still, a lot of them are in courts against the Fujitsu company and the Post Office, which, it is so corrupt. You really need to go into it because the Post Office bribed different kind of people to chase these people and to ignore and hid information about the fact that the algorithm was wrong. What I'm trying to say here, though, is that once people saw the kind of what could happen, not only if you're a whistleblower like Snowden, then they started to care. And the picture behind these words, does anybody recognize it? Yeah. Where is it from? Fantastic. Thank you very much. What's your name? Aparajit. Thank you so much. Yes, it is from Adolescence. Adolescence, for those of you who didn't see, deals with what happens when young, vulnerable boys get sucked into all of these kind of toxic digital environments and get radicalized, and the kind of harms that is being done. And I think one of the fascinating things is that really created a lot of conversation in the UK, and people really started to care because they saw, oh, it's not that thing that happens to other people, it's things that happen to me, and it really created a conversation. Okay, so experiencing breaches of privacy, bullying, and harassment like here, and other threats online as part of people's everyday context mobilizes them to explore avenues to increase their data literacies and think critically about what they can do to object and negotiate big tech power. The second thing that they were talking about, the people that I interviewed, was real or imagined concern. So they were talking that people may develop and share imagined concern that do not really reflect pragmatic threats. And they gave an example in the UK. There was an emergency alert test, which meant that, if like a hurricane happens, then you will get an alert on your phone. And a lot of people got really angry and, a lot of opinion pieces and everything. And a lot of these people that I interviewed said, well, we don't really understand why they thought that that's a threat, and other things like, facial recognition, or this case, which is happening across the world as well, that they don't really know this. So they said crucial risks regarding digital rights are being undermined or ignored when other ones are not really being taken care of. This is actually also was a project of a postdoc that I was guiding, where she shows how when you're searching for in the U.S. that anti-abortion organizations are doing different kind of tricks on Google, both on Google Maps, but also on Google Search. That if you are searching for abortion, it would actually lead you to anti-abortion clinics. And third, who knows what's the picture behind here? As you know, in the inauguration of Donald Trump, in the front row, on the expense of actual politicians, we had all of the big tech companies. Now, this is not normal. I know that we sing it every day, and we're like, haha. No, this is definitely not normal, and I think it really needs to raise our alarm bells, where we have these tech companies that were also, some of them were taken now with Trump to the Saudi Arabia trip that he had, so to sell tech companies to Saudi Arabia. These collaborations between right-wing governments and technology companies are extremely dangerous, and we shouldn't normalize them. And so another theme that emerged was, who is responsible for creating and solving the problems? So by prioritizing corporate profit, many of the people that we interviewed feel that big tech lack legitimacy and generate suspicion across the public regarding the way that they handle people's data. We also saw that once Trump was elected, immediately all of the tech companies were like, woohoo, we can cancel all of those committees, ethics committees that we have, all of the stuff that we pretended to care about, we don't need to pretend anymore, right? So we can cancel all of them, which is happening slowly and gradually. YouTube canceled a lot of their restrictions on hate crime or hate speech against LGBTQI, as we saw with Meta. A lot of companies are starting to realize, actually, maybe we can relax on all that ethics, right? And some of the stuff that they were saying is that what they think that should be is that people should be able to negotiate different measures that the platforms make about them and their communities. People should be better informed about the company's policies. There should be some kind of accountability for those harmful processes created by big tech and the results of those processes. And the fourth and probably most interesting insight was resistance possibilities. So I don't know if you've been following the Austrian activist Max Schrems, who's probably one of the biggest fear of big tech companies, because he's the only one who has the guts to actually go against them. But as we can see here, even though he won, how many years did it take him? 10 years. 10 years it took him. And we're going to talk about that a bit later, about what that actually tells us as normal citizens if we want to go against big tech companies. So NGO practitioners felt that there were few avenues to challenge big tech. Often citizens rely on digital rights NGOs to destabilize power hierarchies or resolve disputes. But some of the things that they said is that small activities, so what maybe Michel de Certeau would call tactics, would also be beneficial, right? So things like Glitch, this is a fantastic organization in the UK, which calls for digital citizenship, which says, you know, if you're seeing something that's wrong online, you should report it, reply, and amplify how that's not okay. So if you're seeing bullying or harassment online, you should kind of call it. So using the tools provided by tech companies, such as reporting or blocking somebody, are known to citizens and should be used. The more citizens shout about the issues on social media, the faster these issues become visible and experienced, and therefore expand their contextual public awareness and social mobilization. And this kind of led me to, you know, a lot of the activities that I was talking so far relates to the data citizenship model that we developed as part of our project, Me and My Big Data, developing data citizenship with UK citizens, where we developed this kind of three main dimensions that people should have in the Datafied and AI society. The first one is data doing, which incorporates practical skills involving data handling and data management. The second one is data thinking, which incorporates critical skills as they view and analyze the world. So that would mean also understanding that a lot of the platforms that we're using are actually, you know, that their main business model is to sell your data. So advertising, which again, we think that everybody knows, but actually when you talk to a lot of people, majority of people still don't know that Meta and Google are basically big advertising companies. And data participating, which for me is the biggest kind of dimension, which is where citizens can seek opportunity to exercise their rights as well as contribute to and shape their collective data experiences. So data doing would include activities like accessing, assessing, interpretation, data citations, ethical use, data deletion. Data thinking, as I mentioned before, is communicating with data, critical data analysis, privacy, understanding the data society, as I said before, and understanding data collection. And data participating would be not only to exercise your rights, but also to help colleagues For example, me with my dad who's spreading misinformation all the time, I need to tell him, but this is actually, that person didn't really say that. If you actually go to their profile, maybe you should stop spreading this. So this is, when we're talking about data participation, it's not only individually, it's also collectively, which I think is extremely important. So citizens have some data rights, but is it enough, as I said before? Because as we founded the project, majority of people don't understand what data are. So when I, do exercises with my students, and first of all, I show them the amount of cookies on their laptops, and then they get really scared. But then when we talk about what kind of things these companies are extracting, what do they actually want? They think, oh, it's probably just my email or gender or age, and I'm like, no, the list is actually much, much longer. And then they get really scared. But when we also ask people, how and when, which companies use their data, majority of people say, oh, it's just Google and Meta maybe, and they really don't understand the amount of companies that are involved in the whole data trading kind of business, and also that their government is also collecting a lot of data on them. They don't understand the business model, as I said, and how algorithms and cookies and ad tech work. So I really want to move on to kind of say, okay, what can we actually do? We got angry. We understand what are the problems. What can we actually do about it? And I'm going to give some examples of different kind of groups that organize. A lot of them are unions, which I think are kind of let's say, they already have the tools to mobilize people and organizations, and they know how to organize and campaign around different issues, so they obviously have an advantage. I'm going to talk about the data and AI citizenship, which includes learning, networking, and acting. And here you can see the California Nurses Association that they demand patient safeguarding. I'm going to show you what they've done in order to do that shortly. So learning, I'm sure that you probably know, this was an anonymous article, I think at the British Medical Journal, about what's happening in the USA, about the fact that you can't use words like gender, bias in your research now because it's not going to be published. A lot of research has already been kind of canceled, even projects that have already been funded. The funding has been extracted from them. And I think that this, you could say, oh, it's just happening in the US. It doesn't matter to us. We're here in Germany. Everything is fine and nice. And I think that that is not the way to go forward, because we know that when one thing is happening in one country, and especially in the US, it could very easily seep in different ways to other countries. So first of all, learning what's happening. This is happening, and we should really understand and organize around this. So these are the words that disappeared in the new Trump administration and that you cannot say in research today. And at the same time, you would say, oh, UK. The UK is not like the US, but as you can see here, librarians in the UK increasingly asked to remove books as influence of US pressure groups spread. As you probably imagine, it's around LGBTQI titles, everything around gender, and all the other woke stuff. So again, it's not stuff that only happens in the US. And in an article that I published with Simeon Yates, which is, again, it's open access, it's part of a book that we published, we provide kind of principle of developing and delivering data literacies. So we talk about ensuring that citizens feel empowered and have practical and alternative routes, consider and design practical challenges citizens face, make clear to citizens their rights, because again, and I'm going to talk about it soon, the majority of people don't know what are their digital and data rights, meet citizens where they are. So that means that you don't just do a top-down kind of approach and just say, oh, this will suit everybody. Support skill development, but also citizenship, and provide critical understanding of the power relationship in our data society. The second thing is network, and I think that in the UK, unfortunately, libraries have been defunded, and almost 1,000 libraries have been closed in the past decades. Thank you, Tories. The Tories, by the way, are the right-wing conservative party in the UK. And I think that it's really important to think of libraries as this network, free network place that we have. And I think that, it serves so many functions, and I think that it's really important for us to realize that that could be a place for us to network. And I talk about networks of literacies in my work as well, which is the ways people engage with others, where and with which media to gain the digital understanding, skills, and competencies in ways that fit them. Because again, a lot of the technologies that we use today, they are specifically designed for us to use them individually and singularly, and we can't share. For example, even the user that you have, the Google user that you have, right? You can't share that with people. Or in the UK, for example, if you have the Oyster card, right? I can't give the Oyster card to Harry, for example, if he wants to have the tube, right? Why not? Like, if both of us go to the tube, why can't I just give it to him? Because it's individually linked to me and my behavior, right? And this is the way that these companies want us to be kind of divided, individual kind of objects. But it's really important for us to come back together to network, because that's what's really helping us to mobilize and to gain power. And guess what? You know who else networks? The big tech companies. Because when there are different kind of things that they need to fight for, they come together, okay? So you can also have disagreements between people, but still come together and fight for a good cause. And ACT. So you remember the nurses that I told you before? These nurses have developed, in the US, the Nurses and Patients Bill of Rights, guiding principle for AI justice in nursing and healthcare, because basically they're saying, oh, you just want us to integrate AI without asking us, the experts, the people who meet these people every day, and you just want us to adopt AI without consulting us, without acknowledging what is meaningful for us in our own work, what is meaningful for the patients in their own everyday life. So they developed their own Bill of Rights. And I think this is a great example of a campaign where they're not just waiting for things to happen. They're showing this is how we want the procedures to be done. We don't want this kind of top-down approach where you're telling us, oh, just adopt AI. We're telling you, if we have to use AI, this is how it should be done because we know better than you. There are different types of campaigning. And again, even if we're not gonna crush capitalism and the big tech tomorrow, there are small steps that we can do towards it, if you're interested. And this is also another fight that archivists are doing, because guess what? The USA is trying to delete a lot of different and important archives, especially about climate, but also about gender and women's health. I wonder why. So different kind of archivists are working to identify and save thousands of data sets that are disappearing from the data.gov, which is the US kind of main kind of data sets about research and about different kind of data that they collect over time. There's also the Data Rescue Project, which is, again, quite similar. So they're trying to identify different kind of data sets that might be in danger of being disappeared by chance by the government or by different kind of forces. And so they're doing that. And I also wanted to show a really successful fight, which you probably heard, of the SAG-AFTRA, which are representing artists and mainly actors in the US. They had a huge strike that lasted for a couple of months. By the way, some of the people that they represent are still on strike, which is the video game creators and actors. And they're still on strike because they're not as famous as the actors that are here. But I think one of the interesting things that they've done is that they really kind of showed, again, how do they want the government, or how do they want AI to be used? What are the guidelines that make sense to them and their community? Again, a lot of libraries in the US are also under danger. So there are different kind of steps that are being made to try to save the libraries. I'm gonna just move. Again, where do we go from here? So I gave you some tips, but here I'm gonna focus on the different institutions in society and what do I think that they should do. So the first one is government, and the UK government although I have the current one, although I have a lot of criticism towards it, I think one of the good things is that it actually launching an inquiry of media literacy, trying to understand what kind of literacies people need. It would be nice if some of the minister, like the technology minister, would maybe meet with less technology CEOs, but nothing is perfect. And so some of the guidance I think that governments need is kind of robust legislation and enforcement. As we saw, it shouldn't take 10 years to win a case, because that tells us that what are the probabilities for that to actually happen, or who has the patience. We need to encourage other types of business model, which for me is the crux of it all. I think that surveillance capitalism, which is a term that Shoshana Zuboff has termed. It's not perfect, but I think it's easier to kind of communicate what's happening here. I think the business model is not okay, and it shouldn't be legal. And actually, a lot of organizations in the US have organized multiple times and tried to make a bill against that. And I think that governments need to encourage other business model that actually respect people's rights and privacies and agency, because this is not working. Legislate mandatory testing and consultation throughout the process of technology's design and development before it comes to the market. This relates to a new project that I'm working, and I worked on it in Weizenbaum Institute last year, and I'm continuing this year, where I'm trying to translate the regulatory procedures that we have in the pharmaceutical industry, and to see how we can translate that into AI, because just like you can't just put a medicine in the world and let's just see what happens, we should have better regulations around technology, whether it's AI, data, and things like that. And we need to have community representatives in the decision-making tables. And we talked about it in the workshop, provide non-digital options, not only because not everybody is connected to the internet, which is a big deal. In the UK, it's almost 4 million people who are still not connected. And some people, even if they are connected, they don't have proper devices or stable internet connection. But also because if we are to believe that the environment apocalypse is coming, then we need to be ready for non-digital options as well. As I said before, this is a survey that was done by the ICO, which is, as I said before, it's the Information Commissioner's Office, which is responsible for the regulation and enforcement of personal data. They asked people if they are even aware of the ICO, and they said no. So the majority of people are not even aware. A lot of people have heard about Ofcom, but most people don't even know that the ICO exists, and definitely not the kind of rights that they have. So if we don't even know which organization we need to actually go to if we have something that goes wrong with our datafied experiences, then how can we actually move forward and understand the magnitude of the problem? This, I'm not going to respond to that because that just upsets me. And this, again, the UK delays plan to regulate AI as ministers seek to align with Trump administration, which is also very fun. But we're going to move to what big tech is supposed to do, which I said before. Definitely the business model needs to be different. We're paying for Netflix, right? And we are paying for Spotify, not me because I hate them. But even if you are, then I think that we need to offer and be creative and innovative about other business models that are not extractive and exploitative, both to people and the environment. As I said before, we've seen a backslide. This is a really great report by the Free Press, and they showed how in the past few years there's been a kind of going a backslide because the right-wing governments are getting stronger. We need to develop user-friendly policies and support mechanism and be accountable for harms. I think only recently we've seen Mark Zuckerberg in one of the Senate appearing that he actually confessed and apologized to parents of kids who have killed themselves or harmed themselves in different ways because of the social media environments and algorithmic kind of manipulations that they've been gone through. This is what I said before. Media. So I think media has a really important role here to inform. A lot of the big kind of investigative journalism that we've seen is extremely important in making those contextual awareness, as I said before, but also create fiction, television, and films to help us contextualize what's happening. So shows like Adolescence, but also Black Mirror. Whoever saw the latest season, I think it's one of the best ones. But again, it helps you understand whether it's fiction or kind of more, maybe less like Adolescence, it's still fiction, but this Black Mirror is a bit going to futuristic areas. They're really important because they create a conversation. They help us really understand that these technologies, what are the harms that can be created, and maybe that we should do something about it or know more about it. NGOs, as I said before, they have a huge role in this, raising awareness and context and harms, developing negotiating power for society. This is a really great campaign that's going now, the Good Law Project, and they're following a lawsuit of a woman that was basically saying, oh, Meta can't really use my personal data according to the law. So now they're creating a bigger scale project around that. This is a really great organization that I really love. They're called Witness, and they really help people to kind of document different kind of harms that are happening and helping different communities to mobilize around the harms that are happening to their communities. And last but not least, the society. So what I think should happen with society is that we need to have new forms of data governance, and technology policymaking should incorporate the public's participation. And there is a whole field in political science called democratic innovation, where they offer different types of politics, which involves citizens in the decision-making process, such as citizens' councils, juries, and collective engagement in these processes. This is just one example where Liverpool City Region Assembly on Data and AI Innovation, where they thought and expressed their feelings about how they want AI and data to be used in their city. And this is part, I don't know if you can see, I have a sticker here. We are starting a new organization in the UK called the Society for Hopeful Technologists. And basically what it's meant is it's meant to bring people together from different fields. So academia, NGOs, people who work in tech who want us to have a better tech future and to see how we can work together. As you can see, we just did a survey and we're analyzing how people want the organization to go. But this is really important because I think that many times we're just kind of talking to ourselves in our own communities, academics and journalists and NGOs and technologists, and a lot of us actually think quite the same. And I think, again, coming together is extremely important because we will have more power together, because we are dealing with extremely powerful organizations that have a lot of resources to make their narrative the dominant one. And we need to start creating our own narratives of how we want the tech future for our societies to look like. Because it doesn't have to look like the one that Meta tells us, or Google tells us, or Amazon tells us. No, we can have our own future. And again, it's really important. I think what I really like about the name is that whenever you criticize technology, people say, oh, you're just against technology or against innovation. And I'm like, no, I'm literally the early adopter of every technology, but I'm just not happy with how it's being designed and how it's being applied, right? It could be done in so many different ways. And as I heard before with the project that you were doing around kind of your lab, remind me what's it called? The Method Lab, exactly, where they want to kind of experiment with different kind of imaginations of how education can be using digital technologies. This is exactly the kind of stuff that we need, right? Imagine how we want our society to be done without this kind of profit-driven and really kind of extractivist methods. Our future could be done differently. So this is why I really like this organization. Let's see where it will go. And yeah, thank you so much for listening.